You hear about this number all the time, right? It drops every month, and suddenly, the news, the stock market, even your own budget, they all react. We're talking about the CPI. But what is it really? Let's dive in and pull back the curtain on this one little number that kind of shapes your entire financial world.
Okay, so think about this for a sec. On the surface, these things seem totally different, right? But believe it or not, they're all connected, sometimes even directly controlled by just one economic number. So what's the secret thread tying all this together?
Yep, it's the CPI, the Consumer Price Index. Think of this one number as the main character in our story today. And, getting a handle on it is absolutely key to understanding the economy we're all living in.
All right, so let's start with what you hear on the news. When some anchor says inflation is up, 9 times out of 10, they're talking about the CPI. But what are they actually measuring?
Okay, so the official definition from the Bureau of Labor Statistics is, well, it's a bit of a mouthful. But the two words you really need to lock onto are market basket. See, this isn't just some random collection of prices. It's a super carefully chosen set of things meant to represent what a typical person, someone like you, actually buys.
Honestly, the easiest way to picture this whole market basket thing, just imagine a giant national shopping cart. Seriously, the government is basically going grocery shopping for the entire country, every single month, just to see how much the total bill changes. So, how do they pull this off? Well, it's basically a 3-step process. First, they have to figure out what even goes in the basket, right? So they survey thousands of families to see what they're buying. Then, step 2, every single month, an army of data collectors goes out and tracks the prices of all those specific items all across the country. And finally, they just add it all up and calculate the change from the last time. That percentage change, that's the inflation number you hear on the news.
So what's actually in this giant shopping cart? Well, it's pretty much exactly what you'd guess. We're talking about the big stuff and the small stuff, the milk in your fridge, the rent you pay, the gas for your car, even your doctor's visits. It's all in there. The whole point is to get a complete snapshot of where our money is going.
Okay, now here's where things get really interesting. So far, we've been talking about the CPI and the national shopping cart as if there's only one. But what if I told you that's not the whole story?
That's right. Surprise! The government doesn't just track one shopping cart, it actually tracks 2. And the reason is simple. Different groups of people feel the sting of inflation in very different ways.
Okay, let's meet our two main players. On one side, you've got the CPI-U. The U is for all urban consumers. And that's the big one, the headline number that covers most of us. Then you've got the CPI-W. The W is for urban wage earners and clerical workers. Think of it as the blue-collar inflation measure. And here is why you really need to know the difference. The CPI-U is used to adjust stuff like our tax brackets. But the CPI-W, that's the one that determines the annual cost of living increase for Social Security. A huge deal.
And just look at the difference in who they cover. The CPI-U is massive. It represents the spending habits of about 93% of the urban population. I mean, that's pretty much everybody. Professionals, people who are retired, you name it, they're in there.
But then you look at the CPI-W, and wow, it's a much smaller slice of the pie. It only covers about 30%. It's a specific subset, right? It's laser-focused on households where most of the money comes from hourly wage jobs or clerical work.
So you might be thinking, okay, why have 2? Is it just about who they cover? Well, not exactly. The real difference, the most important one, comes down to how each of these groups actually spends their money.
And this is the absolute key to the whole thing. The baskets have the same stuff in them, food, housing, gas, but the importance of each category, what economists call the weight, is totally different. It just reflects the reality that, say, a retiree and an hourly worker don't spend their paychecks the same way.
Let's take a perfect example. Groceries, right? Food you buy at the store. For the big CPI-U group, that accounts for about 8.7% of their spending. But for the CPI-W group, that number jumps up to almost 9.6%. Now that might not sound like a huge difference, but it's telling us something really important. These wage-earning households spend a bigger chunk of their budget on absolute essentials, like food.
And that little difference in weighting, it has enormous consequences. I'm not kidding. Because the CPI-W gives more weight to things like groceries and gas, its ups and downs are what directly determine the cost of living adjustments, the COLA, for millions of Americans on Social Security. A tiny percentage change here can literally mean billions of dollars in benefits.
All right, so as important as the CPI is, and it is very important, it's not the only game in town when it comes to measuring inflation. There's actually another major index out there that the real policymakers, I'm talking about the Federal Reserve, watch like a hawk.
So meet the PCE. That stands for Personal Consumption Expenditures Index. What's the biggest difference? Well, think of it this way. The CPI gets its data by asking us what we bought. The PCE gets its data by asking businesses what they sold. It's also a little more clever. It's better at capturing how we change our habits. Like, if beef gets crazy expensive and we all start buying chicken instead, the PCE picks up on that shift faster. And that flexibility, that's exactly why the Fed prefers it. They see it as a more accurate picture of what's really going on.
So at the end of the day, what's the big takeaway? It's that there's no single perfect number for inflation. The CPI-U tells one story. The CPI-W tells a slightly different one, especially for retirees, and the PCE tells yet another. So the next time you see those headlines screaming about inflation, you'll be able to pause and ask the really smart question, whose inflation are they actually talking about?
In conclusion, the video highlights that the Consumer Price Index, CPI, is a vital economic measure that tracks inflation by monitoring price changes in a market basket of goods and services commonly purchased by consumers. It impacts the stock market, personal budgets, and more, often being the key figure cited in news reports about inflation. The CPI is calculated in 3 steps: surveying families to identify typical purchases, collecting monthly price data across the country, and calculating the percentage change from the prior period. This basket includes essentials like food, rent, gas, and healthcare, reflecting everyday spending patterns. The CPI has 2 main variants: CPI-U, which represents about 93% of urban consumers, including professionals and retirees, and CPI-W, which covers roughly 30% of urban wage earners and clerical workers. Although both track similar items, the weight of categories differs. Groceries, for example, make up 9.6% of CPI-W, but only 8.7% of CPI-U, reflecting distinct spending habits. CPI-U influences tax brackets, while CPI-W drives Social Security cost of living adjustments, COLA, affecting billions in benefits. These differences show how inflation impacts various groups differently. In addition to the CPI, the Personal Consumption Expenditures, PCE index, favored by the Federal Reserve, measures inflation by analyzing business sales data rather than consumer surveys. The PCE is more responsive to changes in consumer behavior, such as switching from costly beef to chicken. Each index, CPI-U, CPI-W, and PCE, offers a unique perspective on inflation, with no single measure being perfect. Understanding these distinctions helps viewers critically assess inflation-related news and its broader economic implications.